Hello, I'm Hobby Jackal, and this is Jackalcast, the one-man video podcast, or one man for the moment at least. In this prediction-focused episode, I will be chatting about Age of Sigmar 4th edition, which is due in the summer of 2024, and also my predictions for Adepticon 2024. Let's crack on. Hello and welcome to my first video podcast. So about 5 weeks ago, my wife gave birth to our second son, and having two sprogs under two is pretty damn chaotic. We're pretty much drowning in nappies here. So my usual highly edited frenetic style of video is just not really possible to produce. So I thought I'd go with a slightly more light touch approach, chatting to the camera and just talking through my predictions and expectations during this particularly exciting time. So as a podcast, but still a video, it sort of does a bit of both, and this will appear on YouTube Music, for example, so you can walk around with your headphones in and no screen, and listen to this while making toast, or on the toilet, or both. If you do both, well done. So on to the content. Before I talk about the incredibly intriguing new video calling Sigmar a liar, the jerk, let's just touch upon why we are talking about Age of Sigmar 4th edition, and why we're talking about it as if it's happening when there has been absolutely no official announcement on this front, not a sausage. So this is usual for Games Workshop. They don't hand us a list of when things are going to be coming out, but they are really consistent. So their big IPs, so Warhammer 40k and Age of Sigmar, for instance, follow a 3-year cycle. So each edition lasts for 3 years. During that 3 years, all being well, they will produce battle tomes or army books or codexes for each one of the factions, and each one of the factions will get something. Sometimes that's a single character treatment, sometimes it's a whole new faction or a bit of a refresh in the middle. Because they're so damn reliable, and since Age of Sigmar has existed, it has been part of this 3-year cycle, we could have guessed 5 years ago that Age of Sigmar 4th edition would be launching in the summer of 2024. So not every property follows this cycle, but many of them do. So Warcry, which I'm a big fan of, for example, is expecting a new edition in 2025. Hurrah! And generally it's assumed that a lot of this cycle and this process actually feeds into Games Workshop's shareholders and stock prices and all that kind of thing. And you actually do see these peaks when a 40k arrives, when an Age of Sigmar does. And on that 3-year cycle, you might be thinking, well, what happens in the third year? Mr. Hobby Jackal, just call me Dave. What happens in the third year, Dave? Well, contrast paints have actually sort of filled that gap a couple of times. There was Contrast launch, and then there was an explosion of more Contrast. But actually, they've got so many games like the Horus Heresy and other things on these cycles now that they are probably acting kind of as a buffer. But it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens next year, whether we get something weird hobby related. So anyway, and this is the problem when I am not scripted, going slightly off tangent. So Age of Sigmar this summer 2024. Now we're in March, so the teasers have got to start dropping. And if we look back historically at what they've done for Leviathan, for Warhammer 40k last year, or for Dominions, so Age of Sigmar 3rd edition, we could have pretty much predicted down to the day that we would have seen that video which called Sigmar a liar, because they did pretty much the same thing with Dominion and did these little kind of sneaky hints all the way up to Adepticon, where we had a theatrical trailer and a little look at a couple of the units. Right, so let's chat about that video and what we can glean about the 4th edition of Age of Sigmar from it. So we start at nighttime in what is presumably a city of Sigmar. We can see cobbles, we can see shadows, it's kind of misty, there's a night sky above, and there's nothing here that's instantly jumping out to suggest this is a specific realm. So interestingly, Age of Sigmar does have an emphasis on a particular realm. So we've had Shaiish with 2nd edition, and we've had Gur, the Realm of Beasts, with the 3rd edition. With everybody on the internet, or most people on the internet, kind of suggesting we're expecting another realm to come into ascendancy during this edition. So what we can see here is an urban sprawl. At first glance, I kind of think it's probably not some of the slightly more themed realms, such as Akshi, the Realm of Fire, where you might expect an orangey glow somewhere, or potentially even Giran, the Realm of Life, where they have to fight to remove moss and plants growing over everything, and there's nothing here to suggest perhaps one of those, even though they do stress that, you know, in the Realm of Fire there's also wet bits and all that kind of thing. Generally speaking, in the artwork, cities are quite heavily themed in one direction. As we continue a little bit, a bell starts ringing in the background, a blimmin' bell. This is pointing at the antagonists that we're expecting to see in Age of Sigmar launch box. It's extremely likely at this point that they are going to be Skaven, and I'll chat a bit more about that as we go on. Also, almost instantly after that bell starts ringing, we have a rat scampering across. Now, you know, this is an urban environment, and that could be just a rat, but this is an animated teaser trailer, so somebody has had to animate that rat. So, you know, probably a hint of Skaven. You can hear it and it skitters across, and we continue a bit further. And what we've got is some big statues kind of coming into view here as well. They appear to be Sigmarite statues, one with a hammer raised and one slightly more like the Guardian idols that we've seen in the scenery sets. In amongst the dinging of the bells and the slow approach towards the city, we do have thunder and lightning going off in the background, with both of these closely tied to the Stormcast Eternals. We hear some thumping, the bells are still going, and there's a slight kind of eruption in the ground, or mound in the ground, which suggests that something perhaps has erupted from the ground below, again hinting to Skaven. Then we get a flood of lightning hitting the ground, suggesting a Stormcast Eternal is zooming down, and then the intriguing text, Sigmar Lied. Now, before we unpick that a little bit more, I will just look at the article that's accompanied this video. It highlights that 2 Dawnbringer Crusades have set forth from Hammerhal to forge new settlements and strengthen Sigmar's hold on the mortal realms. After many trials, the foundations for both have been laid and the difficult work for building continues. But something's brewing in the dark, suggesting that there's maybe the streets of one of those 2 cities, although that to me suggests quite a significant time jump. It ends saying, the God King Sigmar lied. Everything has a price. Now that final line, everything has a price, does suggest we might swing towards one of the 2 theories that I was coming up for this, so we'll chat through those in a sec. They have explicitly said more will be revealed at Adepticon in March 20th. I believe that's actually March 21st in the UK. Now, the production quality of this video is top tier, suggesting that this will probably form part of a much larger release trailer for Warhammer Age of Sigmar 4th edition. Now, in case you were in any doubts before we saw the lightning, it's almost definite that the Stormcast Eternals will feature in this box. They've featured in all 3 of the launch boxes for Warhammer Age of Sigmar so far. They are introduced as the handy beginner setting. They are comparatively easy to paint, and you can spray them gold in a wash and maybe even a dry brush, and they actually look pretty good. And, you know, there's lightning and Sigmar mentioned in the video, so they're pretty much a shoo-in at this point. So next we have the lie, so Sigmar lied. Now, Sigmar has been a bit of a fibber in the past, so he's lied to tech lists about their penumbrally engined things that were hiding a load of treasures buried in storm vaults and things like that. I haven't read the books in a while. He probably could be accused of maybe misleading his intentions for some of the mortals in the realms who were basically left out to fend for themselves when chaos erupted across every single one of the realms, and he didn't manage to save them, and then closed the doors on his ear to keep chaos out, and everybody sort of lived happily behind closed doors for a while, and then eventually released the Stormcast Eternals to try and take a load of it back. I don't know if it's a lie, but I suspect he probably would have wandered about with his big hammer saying, I'll save you for a while. So I don't think that's the lie, though. It's a bit iffy, a bit grey around the edges. So a couple of things he may have lied about. So Azir has been dubbed a safe haven. Now, interestingly, there is at least 1 faction, possibly 2, so Chaos maybe has a little bit of influence there, but they kind of blame that on people that got through the gate that were already a bit chaosy. The only other faction that appears to have a claim to Azir is the Skaven. They have magical gnaw holes that let them pop up all over the realms like an infestation of rats, and we've got it in the lore already that they have done that to Azir. So whether Sigmar knows about it or not, if he's claiming Azir to be an entirely safe haven, that's not entirely true. It's already been breached. The other thing that might be a lie probably relates to the Stormcast Eternals, who initially I didn't find super interesting. It was interesting to see something sort of brand new and totally not Warhammer Fantasy Battles when they first arrived, but as they've gone on, they've become much more interesting for me, especially they've become flawed. So if you're not familiar, they're essentially immortal. They die and they go, I think that's more of a recent addition. They actually, some of them literally explode. Their souls whiz up to Azir where they're reforged and sent back off to do the whole thing again. A bit like Groundhog Day, but more violent. So what started happening is each time they're reforged, they sort of lose a little bit of themselves, whether it's memories, whether it's something that forms a key part of their personality, to the point that some of them are almost walking around like these kind of golem-like husks, just doing what they're doing, having very little semblance of humanity about them. Stories released as part of the Dawnbringers campaign do suggest that Vander's Hammerhand is very much going in this direction, becoming quite aloof and suffering from his reforgings. And also we do have some really dark Stormcast stories where, not even caused necessarily by the reforgings, there are some chambers that are so dogged in their approach to rooting out chaos that they will destroy whole settlements or populations of civilians to basically stop chaos from spreading. On top of all this, there have been means by which the Stormcast have not been reforged, so Be'lakor, the mischievous demon prince who would like to be a chaos god, I believe, did a big cloud across the realms which actually stops the Stormcast from zipping through and returning. Ogres have some history of being able to eat a Stormcast and stopping them being reforged, and there's all sorts of other shenanigans. Nagash is still really pissed off that they're taking souls that he deems should be his and plonking them in these golden bodies, and they've probably done something as well to capture the souls. In fact, I think that may have been part of the second edition box. So the second lie, the lie that isn't just assuming that Azir is safe or that Sigmar is a savior kind of lie. The second lie is that the Stormcast are okay. The Stormcast are immortal, and everything's fine with the Stormcast. It's basically Sigmar just go like, yes, this is okay. They've killed all these people, but greater good. Or that person doesn't really seem to know who I am anymore, but they're still hitting stuff with a hammer. So, that's the second lie, or my expectation for the second lie. Now we know there's a few ways that they lose their souls and don't reforge. The Skaven are particularly adept at creating weird war machines and energy weapons and that kind of thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if they create something that can perhaps cause this kind of trouble en masse. And this could have been what they've been up to while they've been lurking under Azir the whole time. Going back to the trailer, I do wonder if this longer trailer will have somebody dramatically appear in that lightning that's formed at the end of that teaser trailer, only to be blown apart, incinerated, or torn apart by something from the Skaven forces. I mean, those streets look pretty empty. There's just a bell ringing and a rat, and aside from that, nobody's around. Now, this could be the middle of the night, and they could be a peaceful people. But I suspect something bad's going to happen when whatever pops down in the thunder arrives, if they do manage to arrive. So, on to the Skaven. So I've mentioned that Skaven were on their way for quite a long time on this channel, and originally this was because a rumour monger called Whitefang, who is one of the subtler rumour mongers who just sort of lurks on forums, and when somebody says something that Whitefang believes is good and has some insider information about, they just sort of do a little just like, yeah, I like your style, mate. So Whitefang started liking the idea that Skaven was going to appear and has consistently liked certain posts about things. And this isn't just some randomer lurking on the internet. They have a track record of doing these really subtle likes for things that actually do pan out. So it's an interesting way that the rumour spread. That's the first time I heard about it. So this is quite a ways back. And one of the reasons I latched onto this was that it makes sense. Games Workshop bloody loves cycles, not just the 3-year cycle, but in the first edition of Age of Sigmar, it was Stormcast versus Chaos. Then in the second edition, we had Stormcast versus Nighthaunt, or Death. Then in the third edition, we had Stormcast versus Destruction. Cruel Boys were introduced. And now we come back round to Stormcast versus Chaos. Now, of all the Chaos forces, one of those really does need a refresh, and it just so happens to be the Skaven, who are still plopping about pretty much using the same models they had for Warhammer Fantasy Battle. And they include the oldest models to still exist on the Games Workshop websites. We're talking the early 1990s. And they're great models, but they really, just really big hands and kind of clunky, and the technology's moved on so far since then. In fact, one of the first models I bought when I was probably about 9 years old is still for sale. It's not a hard rumour to believe. So what's happened since? People have elaborated on this rumour, it's grown, people have done lists saying we think these things are going to be done, so the clan rat's going to be redone, and the plague monks aren't, and there's going to be wolf rats and all sorts of other things. And unfortunately I can't tie any of those to a rumour monger I necessarily trust, so I'm not going to reiterate those here. There's a lot of variations on it, and then the thing is we're at a point that so much of the range needs a refresh, but has featured in the Skaven range for so long that I could sit and I could do one of those lists and sort of wish list but make logical guesses, many of those which will pan out, but it's not really a rumour, it's just logic at this point. A lot of those things are going to happen. So on my channel I did what do you want to see? A big Molder Beast? Do you want to see a big Skyer Doom Weapon? Do you want to see some new Plague Monks? And it's like, well, all those things are pretty likely to happen. And we'll hopefully have something for Clan Eshin, and they would fit wonderfully into Warcry. But I'll touch on why I'm not necessarily expecting them for Warcry when we get to the Adepticon predictions. So anyway, all that aside, we then had a sprue leaked. This was claimed to be one that was sent out by accident. There are quite a lot of claims like that, and also random instances of sprues turning up in boot sales, and I don't know how much of this is true or whether it's somebody sneakily kind of leaking these things. So anyway, the sprue appeared. It is for a Clan Skyer weapon. It's got a weapon team with some kind of gun. Interestingly, probably the biggest takeaway here is that this is a push-fit model, and push-fit models always turn up in launch boxes, adding to the credence that we're expecting to see Stormcast versus the Skaven. And I forgot to mention, when we're talking Stormcast, there are lots of different Stormcast chambers. Several of them have been opened. Every time Sigmar has a panic, he hits a button and goes, "Open another chamber," and then they go, "Hey, it's us. We were in the cupboard. We were these Stormcasts waiting to do this thing." And then he releases them on the realm. There are some rumours and murmurings online that the Ruination Chamber will be next, and that these may be sort of pariahs or sort of Stormcast who have a single reforging left, or maybe as a result of the Skaven shenanigans only have sort of one shot and then they're dead, and that they may tie in a little bit with like the fanaticism and the Order of Azir style of the Cities of Sigmar, so that's like the Witch Hunters and the Flagellants and that side of things. So that'd be really cool. I don't know if that rumour has any links to reality, but I thought it sounded cool, so repeating that here. Pinch of salt with all this stuff, aside from the Skaven, who are almost definitely coming. So, yeah, the sprue turned up, push fit, starter set, it's pretty much definitely going to be there. Before I move on to Adepticon, let's chat about Rumour engines. So, if we're expecting a whole range refresh for the Skaven, wouldn't we expect to see lots of Skaven-y bits in the Rumour engines? Well, there aren't many, but for Dominion, for example, they saved a load of them and then used those to tease us as they headed towards the release date. So, I don't know, by the time I release this video, there might even be one of these new Rumour engine things, or they might start doing that after Adepticon and teasing the new models and that kind of thing. However, there are two Rumour engines from memory that I thought kind of linked to the Skaven, and that's if I'm ignoring some of the ones that look a bit like contraptions. So there's some old wooden contraptions, they're not 40k, they're clearly something for Age of Sigmar, but I think they're more greenskin style contraptions, so I'm ignoring those. And the two Rumour engines I think might be Skaven are the Big Hand, which looks remarkably like a Rat Ogre hand. But you know, it's a bit iffy. There's lots of things that have big hands. We had the Gorges recently, which don't look too dissimilar. There's lots of trolly things around, but going Rat Ogre. They need a refresh, and the ones in Island of Blood were awesome. And the other one is kind of this apothecary kind of table type thing, which looks like could be Skaven-y and could probably link with Clan Pestilence, because they mess about with potions and diseases and all sorts of things, or possibly Clan Moulder, where they're doing lots of, it could be like a mutation potion or something to create a beast. So what am I expecting next? So I'll touch on Adepticon a bit more in a minute, but I'm expecting a full cinematic trailer at Adepticon for this, and probably a couple of models, at least a model, some kind of more hints of a model. For Age of Sigmar 4th edition itself, I'm expecting the spearhead boxes to match what they've done for 40k, which is where these individual boxes have their points adjusted, their rules adjusted, so that I can pick up a box and my friend can pick up another one of those boxes, and we can play each other in a matched game. So previously all the boxes would sort of give you, say, I don't know, 400 to 750 points of a different army, and they wouldn't necessarily work on the table, or they definitely wouldn't work against each other, because points-wise they'd be vastly different. And what they've done with the new system in 40k is go, right, this is the starter system, we're going to actually produce completely different war scrolls. We're going to simplify the rules, we're going to take off any rules that relate to something that's not really relevant to this box and make a really nice entry point so people can get playing the game. And I'm super psyched for that. I really hope they do that for Age of Sigmar, and the fact that they've started releasing spearheads in a slightly different mode of these starter boxes gets me really excited. And the Cities of Sigmar one is awesome and really, really good value for money, so check that one out, it's cool. And next after Skaven, the other rumour that's floating around, which actually has been reiterated by some rumour mongers that get stuff right sometimes, is that Chaos Dwarves are coming back. I really didn't think it was going to happen. I know there were hints, and that we had, even in Warcry, we had the Horns of Hashut, human vanguard for them, and they've sort of popped up here and there, but I really sort of was in the Malarian camp that the Shadowy Elves would make an appearance at some point, but the rumours are no Shadow Elves, but Chaos Dwarfs, so curious to see what happens there, and whether they will have big hats, or whether they'll be more like the toned down sort of helmeted versions of Forge World, or somewhere in between. And that's it for AOS 4 for the moment. Do let me know what you think in the comments and what you're excited about, or what you think's utter rubbish, or if you're watching this in the future, you could just tell me what I got right and wrong, and kick me about it. Right, so on to Adepticon previews. So we've been told exactly which games are getting stuff, and interestingly this time they said plus exciting teasers. So it's almost like a forewarning that it's going to be really light touch on a couple of these things, but you will see something, which I suspect is to combat people getting really shitty online, saying, oh, there was going to be this thing and it's just one model, rubbish. Whereas actually, that's one model you didn't know about before today, so it's good. It's a nice little teaser. So first up we have Warhammer 40k. I don't stay 100% on top of 40k rumours. However, the internet is flooded with these things, so I pick up a bit on the wayside, and Chapter Master Balrak is talking about Agents of the Imperium, and I believe Blood Angels are likely to be a big release in the future, so probably one of those at this one. So next on the image we have Warhammer Age of Sigmar, so I'm saying 4th edition. We're very likely to also see the 6th Dawnbringers book, and I think this will focus on chaos, so we're expecting to see potentially a Valkyr type character, because there's this Chaos Spear and a Rumour engine and some sort of Chaos Steedy type things, although Valkyr would be flying. But also Korgus Kull, maybe Vandus Hammerhand coming back to have models, with Korgus Kull potentially being a big demon-y creature. We are also expecting to see the full release trailer for Age of Sigmar 4th edition, and I think they probably, as I said, will keep that down to the trailer, maybe a couple of models. And I do wonder if they might kick off a community event. So for Leviathan, they did a thing where you could sort of submit your results and see who won and that kind of thing, and they would show something more for the release, but actually, now I'm saying that actually happened after the release, then it was charting your battles in the box. But there might be something like that, something community engagement where you can impact whether this city survives or is taken over by Skaven, and that would be really cool. That'd be nice to see that for Age of Sigmar. And we might get more of the range release for the Skaven or the Stormcast, depending on who wins. So that's it for Age of Sigmar, really. It's a bit speculative. But yeah, Dawnbringers 6, AOS 4, and some nice stuff. So for Warcry, our roadmap just finished saying there's 2 warbands. It doesn't say what they are at all, doesn't link them to factions. So we've had a preview image. It's an Ossiarch Bone Reaper kind of doggy thing. I'm pretty sure this is going to be for Warcry rather than Age of Sigmar proper, and I don't think it's for Warhammer Underworlds because they always have sculpted bases, which this one does not have. Now, interestingly enough, when we were told that we were getting a Death versus Order box, which was the last one, which was Lumineth versus Nighthaunt, I was there going, yeah, it's going to be Nighthaunt, and this was just because in a Lore Masters video they stuck an image of the Nighthaunt in the middle of the Gnarlwood video, even though there was nothing about the Nighthaunt at all in any of the Gnarlwood books and boxes. And there's this piece of art with them next to a bit of the Seraphon gadget inside the Gnarlwood, so I just thought, well, they've done something with Nighthaunt there. I was one of the only people, I think, shouting about that one, but yeah, it panned out anyway. However, everybody else was saying that it's probably going to be Ossiarch for the Death ones, just because they hadn't had anything in a while, and actually it turns out they are probably appearing in the next Warcry box. Now, who they are facing against, no idea. So the other faction to appear in that same Lore Masters video that hasn't panned out into a Warcry warband, and which doesn't appear in like the 6 or so Gnarlwood focused books that I've got and read through, are the Sylvaneth. Now, it could be the person that was writing that lore background video was just like, I like the Sylvaneth, this is a forest, this is just put 2 and 2 together and they just elaborated, but it does seem unlikely. So I do wonder if the Kernothi or a Kernothi element of the Sylvaneth is going to appear in Warcry. Now, the Kernothi appeared in Warhammer Underworlds, and this is often the trend. We've seen it with the Dark Oath. Dark Oath appeared in Warhammer Quest, and then Warhammer Underworlds, and then Warcry, and now they've made their way into the main game. And it seems to be a kind of proving ground or a place for testing ideas and that kind of thing. So it's a bit out there, but my guess is Ossiarch, which isn't super out there now, and Kernothi or Sylvaneth. So on to Warhammer the Old World. We know that the Dwarfs are coming at some point. We've got the Greenskins on the way. They are an obvious opponent for them. It does mean that we might even see a reprint of the Battle for Skull Pass, which contains models which you could use in both of those still. And we've seen Dice already accidentally released for the Dwarfs, so it just seems to be a shoo-in that we'll see the Dwarfs. I expect a couple of new characters and then most of the old stuff ported back over. For Kill Team being 40k, again, I've not kept my ears super close to the ground, but I've seen the rumblings that we are going to get Genestealer Cults and Leagues of Votan, I think. Feel free to shout at me in the comments. I love the look of the Kill Team stuff, but I'm a hobby butterfly, and if I step outside of this pile of grey stuff that I've got for all the fantasy ranges, I will just be drowning. I don't have enough money to do both. I don't have enough time. So for Warhammer Underworlds, we don't have much to go on again, because we've sort of like plopped off the end of the roadmaps that they produced for us, where they would sort of give hints as to what we were getting. So when the Pestilence models came out, my second guess was Nurgle Demons. So this time I'm going to say Demons of Nurgle. And I don't know, maybe Cities of Sigmar again or something like that, I'm not really sure. But I am looking forward to finding out, because their models are always excellent. Right, we end on exciting teasers for Necromunda and Horus Heresy. No idea, absolutely no idea. I mean, they've just released Space Skaven for Necromunda, so anybody's guess. So depending on where you are in the world, we'll be finding out the answers to all of these queries and questions and predictions on the 20th and 21st of March. So that's Wednesday or Thursday. For me in the UK, that is 3 AM Thursday morning. And because I've got a little toddler and a newborn baby, I might be awake. I might be awake then, and I might be able to watch it. So anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. What do you think? Do you like this format? Is it just annoying? Let me know in the comments anyway, either way, and if it works, I might do a few more of these. If not, I will just curl into a ball for the next few months and then reappear doing my usual video stuff. If you're coming to this from the not too distant future and stuff was right, stuff was wrong, do feel free to shout at me in the comments, pat me on the head if something was right, and kick me and steal my lunch money if something was wrong. I deserve it. Electronic punches in the comments. Alright, catch you again sometime soon. Cheers.